So as I have discussed in the beginning in detail, that in the Hanafi madhhab, only fish is halal from sea animals. And those Hanafi jurists who believe that prawns and shrimps belong to the species of fish, according to them, prawns are halal for the Hanafis. And those who took the position that prawns do not belong to the fish family, according to them, it is impermissible for the Hanafis to consume prawns and shrimps. And I have covered this topic in detail as to how the common people should approach these issues which are validly disputed in their respective madhhab, and the adab of ikhtilaf. And with regard to lobsters, squids, crabs, octopuses, and turtles, since none of these belong to the fish family, unanimously in the Hanafi madhhab it is haram to consume them. Crabs, lobsters, squids, octopuses, they're all impermissible for Hanafis. They are not halal for Hanafis. Only fish and that which belongs to the species of fish is halal for Hanafis. And also from the fish family, the consumption of venomous, poisonous, and all kinds of harmful fish are all haram, even though they belong to the species of fish. And the fish that dies a natural death without any external cause and starts to float on the surface of the water is also haram in the Hanafi madhhab, as explained in detail before. So that's the summary of the Hanafi madhhab. As for the Shafi'i madhhab, according to the Shafi'is, unlike the Hanafis who believe that only fish is halal from the sea animals and all other sea animals are haram, in the Shafi'i madhhab, all sea animals that cannot survive out of water are halal, with the obvious exception of harmful animals which are unanimously haram in all madhahib. So fish, prawns and shrimps are all halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. But regarding those sea animals that can survive out of water, there are two valid positions within the Shafi'i madhhab. One valid position is that those aquatic animals that can survive out of water are halal. In light of that position for the Shafi'is, squids, lobsters, crabs, octopuses, turtles are all halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. That's one position. And the other mu'tamad position within the Shafi'i madhhab regarding those aquatic animals that can survive out of water is that they are haram, and this is also a valid position. So according to this mu'tamad, reliable, valid position of the Shafi'i, lobsters, crabs, squids, octopuses and all those sea animals that can survive out of water are haram according to this valid position of the Shafi'i. And there are conditions and prerequisites to this, and there's more detail to this which I will cover in detail in this discourse inshallah. And another additional point is that the consumption of frogs is unanimously haram even though they live in water and on land. And the reason for their prohibition is because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited the killing of frogs. So if killing the frogs is haram, then eating it is also haram, because how will you eat them without killing them? So that's generally the summary of the Shafi'i madhhab and the Hanafi madhhab. And I will present the proofs of the Hanafis and the Shafi'is from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam at the end of this talk inshallah ta'ala. But before that, I want to present the traditional approach of the Shafi'i ulama to their madhhab as a response to the La Madhhabiyya and some so-called Shafi'is, which will also be very beneficial for the students of sacred knowledge. So the La Madhhabiyya, who claim that the prohibition of lobsters is an innovation of the Hanafis, and this is why no other madhhab held this position, and they are trying to use the statements of some Hanafi muftis who said that this is a problem only in the Hanafi madhhab. And in all other mazahib, lobsters and crabs are halal and all seafood is halal. This is a mistake by those Hanafis. And then those naive Shafi brothers who are supporting the La Madhhabiyya against the Hanafi madhhab, in reality they are criticizing a mu'tamad, a valid, reliable position within their own madhhab, in the Shafi'i madhhab. And I will present all the arguments, I will present all the proofs from the Shafi'i sources, from the books of the Shafi'i. And insha'Allah ta'ala, I will prove that the hurma, the impermissibility of lobsters and crabs and squids and other sea animals that can survive out of water, this is also a valid position within the Shafi'i madhhab. So these students of knowledge and these ulama should firstly study the methodology of the Shafi'i madhhab and understand how the traditional Shafi'i ulama approach their madhhab. If you are truly a Shafi'i, then firstly study and understand your madhhab before questioning the authenticity or the validity of the Hanafi madhhab. I can't understand how people can call themselves scholars of al-Islam, and yet they claim that this position of the Hanafis regarding the impermissibility of lobsters and crabs and squids and other sea animals that can survive out of water, that this position of the Hanafis has no foundation in the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is why no madhhab has accepted this position. Wal-'iyazu billah. I will present the arguments of the Hanafis and the Shafi'is directly from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Now let us explain the hukm shari in the Shafi'i madhhab in light of the methodology of the traditional Shafi'i scholars. So the Tullabul Ilm in the future are careful in quoting from the other madhahib. So they don't pick up any book of any other madhhab and start quoting from some anomalous shaz, da'if or aberrant aqwal from the Shafi'i madhhab or any other madhahib. Remember, in the Shafi'i madhhab, generally all seafood is halal, with the obvious exception of harmful food. Venomous or poisonous sea animals, which are unanimously haram in all the four madhahib, which I have explained in detail before. But the ikhtilaf within the Shafi'i madhhab is regarding those sea animals which can survive out of water. So according to the Shafi'i madhhab, those aquatic animals which die when taken out of water, or their life becomes like that of a slaughtered animal. Aishul mazbuh, meaning the way when an animal is slaughtered, it shakes, it moves about. Or when a bird is slaughtered, it flutters its wings with pain. So this life of suffocation and pain is known as Aishul mazbuh. And after a little while, after being slaughtered, the animal dies. So that short period of time between being slaughtered and death, that is known as Aishul mazbuh, the painful life of a slaughtered animal. So those sea animals which die immediately when taken out of water, and those which may live for a little while but their life is like Aishul mazbuh, the slaughtered animal's life, these are all halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. The aquatic animals which die immediately when taken out of water, or their life is like Aishul mazbuh and they'll die after a little while. They are all halal in the Shafi'i madhhab, whatever shape or form they may be in. Regardless of whether they look like fish or not. Like prawns and shrimps, they are unanimously halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. Or any other sea animals, they may look like insects or crustaceans, but as long as when they are taken out of water, they die immediately, or their life becomes like Aishul mazbuh, the life of a slaughtered animal, meaning they live a very short life of suffocation and pain and then they die immediately after that. These are all halal unanimously in the Shafi'i madhhab. But those that live in water and land, and when they are taken out of water, they don't die immediately, nor does their life become like Aishul mazbuh. As in, they don't suffocate like prawns and shrimps and fish. So these sea animals that can survive out of water, even if it's for a day or two, or even longer, like lobsters and crabs or even turtles. Regarding such sea animals, there are two valid positions, two mu'tamad positions within the Shafi'i madhhab. Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah, who is from the Ashab al-Tarjih of the Shafi'i madhhab, he held the position that these sea animals are haram. Al-Imam al-Rafi'i's position is taken from his famous work Fathul Aziz. Remember, Fathul Aziz of Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah is the commentary of Al-Wajiz, which is authored by Al-Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. So Fathul Aziz is a lengthy work which is a commentary of Al-Wajiz of Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. And Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, he summarized Fathul Aziz. And the summarized version of Fathul Aziz is the Rawdatul Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. So the asl of Rawda is Fathul Aziz. And Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, who is also from the Ashab al-Tarjih of the Shafi'i madhhab, in light of his position mentioned in his Rawdatul Talibin and also in his Minhajul Talibin, such animals who live in water and land, like lobsters, crabs, squids, turtles and others, are all haram according to this position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, which is taken from his Minhajul Talibin and Rawdatul Talibin and the asl of Rawdatul Talibin, which is Fathul Aziz, which proves that that is also the position of Al-Imam al-Rafi rahimahullah, who is from the Ashab al-Tarjih of the Shafi'i madhhab. So in light of this mu'tamad position of the Shafi'i madhhab, lobsters, crabs are all haram. And all those sea animals are haram that can easily survive out of water. And frogs are haram because they are clearly mentioned in the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ prohibited the killing of frogs. And it's impossible to consume them without killing them. So since the killing is haram, then the consumption of frogs is also haram. So this is one valid position of the Shafi'i mazhab, which is also the position of Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah, who is from the Mutaakhirun, from the scholars of the later period in the Shafi'i mazhab, which I will cover in detail later. Now, what is the dalil for this position of the Shafi'i mazhab? I have with me Minhajul Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says, حيوان البحر السمك منه حلال كيف مات وكذا غيره في الأصح وما يعيش في بر وبحر كضفدع وسرطان وحية حرام. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says that from the animals of the sea, fish is halal. Fish is lawful, however it died. كيف مات, whatever the cause of its death is. Remember, this is not the position of the Hanafis. In the Hanafi madhhab, it should die with some external cause. If the fish dies a natural death without any external cause and starts to float on the surface of the water, then that fish is haram in the Hanafi madhhab. But Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says, كَيْفَ مَاتَ, however it dies, it would be halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. And then he says, وَمَا يَعِيشُ فِي بَرٍّ وَبَحْرٍ كَدِفْدَعٍ وَسَرَطَانٍ وَحَيَّةٍ حَرَامٍ. And whatever lives in the sea and land, like frogs, lobsters and snakes, are all haram in the Shafi'i madhhab according to this position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, which is taken from Minhaju Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. And I'm coming to the other position from Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. So this clearly proves that it is not a bid'ah of the Hanafis to say that lobsters and crabs are haram. And for the La Madhhabiyya and some so-called Shafis who claim that this is only in the Hanafi madhhab, this is also an established mu'tamad position within your own madhhab. If only you had studied the traditional approach to your own madhhab by your traditional scholars, you would have never claimed that this is only a problem in the Hanafi madhhab. And remember when it is said that وَمَا يَعِيشُ فِي بَرٍّ وَبَحْرٍ, that they live on land and in water, what is meant by that? The meaning of that is that their life does not become like that of a slaughtered animal. As I have explained before, because some lobsters can survive on land longer than the others. And their life out of water is not like the life of fish or prawns. Fish use their gills to absorb oxygen that is dissolved in water. Now because fish draw oxygen from water, most of them when they're taken out of water, they suffocate and they die in very little time. Whereas lobsters can survive out of water for days, because they can extract oxygen from the air as long as their gills remain moist. Now this doesn't mean that if you find species of fish that can survive out of water for 3 or 4 days, that fish would be haram. No, the Hanafi ulama would respond to this. Because according to the Hanafi ulama, the permissibility of fish is proven directly from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the hadith of Sunan ibn Majah, in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, the hadith of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, and the other hadith of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, in which as-samak, the fish, is explicitly mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And about the other narration of Ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says, not the one in which hut is mentioned. I'm referring to the one in which explicitly the word as-samak is mentioned. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah in his Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab, he says that this hadith is sahih. According to Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, that narration is sahih. So the Hanafis say that the fish is halal because its permissibility is explicitly established from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the qawl of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. But regarding lobsters and crabs that can survive out of water, according to Hanafis, they are unanimously haram. And in the Shafi'i madhhab, there are two valid positions. One position is that they are haram and the other is that they are halal. Some lobsters and crabs can survive out of water for 2-3 days or even more. For instance, blue crabs, which are primarily aquatic, but they can still survive out of water for 1 or 2 days. And there are some crabs that they can spend their entire life out of water. But the point that we need to remember is that what is agreed upon is that the life of lobsters and crabs out of water is not like Aishul Mazbuh, is not like the life of a slaughtered animal. And they can survive out of water. For the first position of them being haram, I have presented a clear reference from Minhaju Talibin, and the same is established from Rawdatu Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, the asl of which is Fathul Aziz of Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah, who is also from the Ashabu Tarjih of the mazhab of Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah. Now moving on to the second position of the Shafi'i mazhab, which is also the position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, established from Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab of Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, is that these sea animals that can survive out of water are also halal. Meaning all sea animals, regardless of whether they can survive out of water or not, they are all halal with the exception of frogs. Because killing them is clearly prohibited in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also harmful, poisonous sea animals are unanimously haram in all 4 madhahib. So Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah in his Sharh al-Muhazzab, Al-Muhazzab, which is authored by Al-Imam Abu Ishaq Shirazi rahimahullah, the commentary of Al-Muhazzab is known as Sharh al-Muhazzab. This commentary is by Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, and Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says, الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر تحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. He says in his Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab that the Sahih Mu'tamad position is that whatever is in the sea, its dead is halal with the exception of frogs. And on the same page, after some lines, he says, قَدْ ذَكَرْنَا أَنَّ الصَّحِيحَ مِنْ مَذْهَبِنَا حَلُّ جَمِيعِ مَيْتَاتِ الْبَحْرِ إِلَّا الضِّفْدَعِ. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah states that indeed we have mentioned that the Sahih from our mazhab is that all dead sea animals are halal with the exception of difdi', with the exception of frogs. And then he further states, وَحَقَاهُ الْعَبْدَرِيُّ عَنْ أَبِي بَكْرٍ الصِّدِّيقِ وَعُمَرَ وَعُثْمَانَ وَابْنِ عَبَّاسٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَنْهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. He says that Abdari mentioned this madhhab from Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu and Sayyidina Umar, Uthman and Sayyidina Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. That this is also the madhhab of these great Sahaba ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhim ajma'een. So here we have presented both the positions of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, one from his Rawdatul Talibin in Minhajul Talibin, which is that these sea animals that can survive out of water are haram. And the second position from Al-Majmu' Sharhul Muhazzab is that they are halal. And as I said that the asl of Rawdatul Talibin is Fathul Aziz, which is the commentary of Al-Wajiz. And Fathul Aziz is by Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah, who is also from the Ashabul Tarjih. So according to Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah, lobsters and crabs are also haram. So Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah's position established from Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab is that all these sea animals that can survive out of water are halal. And the position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah established from Minhajul Talibin and Rawdatul Talibin, which is also the position of Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah, is that these sea animals that can survive out of water and their life does not become like Aishul Mazbuh, the life of a slaughtered animal, they are all haram. That's the second reliable mu'tamad position within the Shafi'i madhhab. And frogs are unanimously haram because the hurma of killing them is mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And also venomous and poisonous, harmful animals are also haram unanimously in all four madhahib. Now the question is that what is the traditional approach of the Shafi'i scholars regarding such issues, in which you have two mu'tamad positions? Remember, there are many commentaries of the works of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, and especially Minhajul Talibin has many commentaries. Two famous commentaries, one is by Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah and the other is by Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah. Both have their famous commentaries on Minhajul Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah in his commentary of Minhajul Talibin, Nihayatul Muhtaj ila Sharhil Minhaj, he gave preference, he gave tarjih to the position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah stated in Minhajul Talibin and Rawdatul Talibin. And according to the great Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah, the position in Rawdatul Talibin and Minhajul Talibin is the reliable mu'tamad position of the Shafi'i madhhab. Whereas Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah in his commentary of Minhajul Talibin, Tuhfatul Muhtaj bi Sharhil Minhaj, in his commentary, he gives preference to the position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah taken from Al-Majmu' Sharhul Muhazzab. So the great Imam of the Shafi'is, Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah, he believes that the position of all seafood being halal is the reliable, valid, mu'tamad position, is the sahih position. Now there is a qaida in the Shafi'i madhhab that if these two great Imams from the mutaakhirun of the Shawafi, if they have ikhtilaf, then the Shafi'i Mufti has the ikhtiyar, he has the option, he has the right to issue a verdict on any of the two positions. That's a principle in the Shafi'i madhhab. So this itself proves that there are two valid mu'tamad positions within the Shafi'i madhhab. And only those people of knowledge or students of deen will accept this, those who accept the traditional methodology of the Shawafi. This may not mean anything to those who have no knowledge of the traditional Shafi'i methodology, who have no understanding of how the Shafi'i Imams approach their madhhab. And they just like picking up any shaz, marjuh, da'if or any anomalous aberrant aqwal and they attribute them to the Shafi'i madhhab. This approach is rejected. And those who ascribe positions to the Shafi'i madhhab based on the Hanafi sources or the Maliki or the Hanbali sources, if you will ascribe positions to the other mazahib based on the books of your mazhab without studying the other mazahib, you may end up promoting a marjuh, rejected call which is rejected in all four mazahib, the dangers of which I've explained in detail previously in my Urdu talks. And to give a fatwa out of the four madhahib takes you out of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So it is essential that if you find a call in the Hanafi books regarding the Shafi'i madhhab, and even if you're a scholar in your own madhhab but you haven't studied the methodology of the other madhhab, you may be treated as a ammi in the other madhhab. So it's necessary that you ask the people of the other madhhab, the reliable scholars of the other madhhab, in order for you to completely comprehend the prerequisites and the conditions of the mas'ala. And I have presented many examples in the past how people belonging to one mazhab falsely ascribe positions to the other mazahib, which ultimately strengthens the case of the la mazhabiyya. We have to be very careful, and those who are using the vague statements of the Hanafi muftis against the Hanafi madhhab, after listening to this presentation, they will understand that they were grossly mistaken. Now I have with me the Sharh of Minhajul Talibin by Imam Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah, known as Tuhfatul Muhtaj. Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah says, لكن تعقبه في المجموع فقال الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر تحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. Now remember, there's a qaida in the istilah of Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah, that if Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah doesn't explicitly mention as to which position is mu'tamad to him and which position is da'if according to him, then the ma ba'd of lakin is considered to be the mu'tamad of Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah. I will explain this in detail after translating the text. Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah says that Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah said in his Al-Majmu' that the correct mu'tamad position, الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر تحل ميتته إلا الضفدع, that according to Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, the sahih mu'tamad position is that all dead sea animals are halal with the exception of frogs, وَمَا فِيهِ سُمٌّ, and that which has poison in it. Now here Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah mentions the position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, which is taken from Al-Majmu'. Now the question is, what is the position of Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah? Remember, there is a special istilah, special terminology of Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah in the Shafi'i madhhab, that if Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah doesn't explicitly mention as to which position is mu'tamad to him and which position is da'if according to him, then in that case the ma ba'd of lakin, whatever comes after lakin, is considered to be his preferred position, provided that there is no kama before lakin. If there is no kama before the lakin, then the ma ba'd of the lakin is considered to be the mu'tamad position of Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah. And if he does mention the word kama before lakin, and after kama he mentions something after which he mentions lakin, then in this case the ma qabl of lakin, whatever is before lakin, whatever is after kama and before lakin, in between kama and lakin, that will be the mu'tamad position of Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah. And in that case the ma ba'd of lakin, whatever is after lakin, will be the da'if position according to Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah. Now in this text of تحفة المحتاج he says لكن تعقبه في المجموع فقال الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر تحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. What is this now? He doesn't apply kama before lakin, and what is the qaida? If there is no kama before lakin, then the ma'bad of lakin is considered to be the mu'tamad position according to Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah. And what is the ma'bad of lakin here? The position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah taken from his Al-Majmu', and that is that all sea animals, regardless of whether they survive out of water or not, are halal, with the exception of frogs and poisonous animals. So according to this position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, which is the preferred position of Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah, lobsters, crabs, turtles and squids are all halal in the Shafi'i madhhab. This is the position that Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki alayhi rahmah gives preference to. Now the second position is the position of Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah, who is a great authority in the Shafi'i madhhab. Remember, he is the son of the great Al-Imam Shihabuddin Ramli. There are two Ramlis, the father and the son, rahimahumallah. They are both known as Al-Imam Ramli rahimahullah. And remember, this is not Khairuddin Ramli rahimahullah. Sometimes people get confused with Al-Imam Khairuddin Ramli rahimahullah and the two Shafi'i Imams, the father and son, Shihabuddin and Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah. And the father, Imam Shihabuddin Ramli rahimahullah, is the teacher of the great Arif Billah, Al-Imam Abdul Wahhab Sha'rani rahimahullah. Imam Abdul Wahhab Sha'rani rahimahullah is the student of the father Shihabuddin Ramli rahimahullah, who was also from the awliya. And Al-Imam Abdul Wahhab Sha'rani rahimahullah mentions about the son Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah. He says that when I used to study with the father, I used to carry the son Shamsuddin Ramli alayhi rahmah on my shoulders. And in his childhood, I saw the manifestation of miracles from the son Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah. So not only the father was a great waliullah and a teacher of the great Arif Billah, Allama Abdul Wahhab Sha'rani rahimahullah. According to Al-Imam Abdul Wahhab Sha'rani rahimahullah, even the son Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah showed miracles in his childhood. Subhanallah. These are great authorities in Islam and the great Imams of the Shafi'i madhhab. So you can appreciate the maqam of this great Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah. So coming back to the commentary of Minhaj al-Talibin by Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah, known as Nihayatul Muhtaj ila Sharh al-Minhaj. In his Sharh of Minhaj, he says, وما يعيش دائما في بر وبحر قد افتع بكسر أوله وفتحه وضمه مع كسر ثالثه وفتحه في الأول وكسره في الثاني وفتحه في الثالث وسرطان ويسمى عقرب الماء ونسناس وحية وسائر ذوات السموم وسلحفاة وترسة على الأصح حرام لاستخباثه وضرره مع صحة النهي عن قتل الضفدع اللازم منه حرمته كذا في الروضة كأصلها وهو المعتمد وإن قال في المجموع أن الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر تحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah says وما يعيش دائما في بر وبحر كضفدع, that whatever lives in water and land like frogs, and then he explains 4 or 5 different ways of how you can say the word ضفدع. بكسر أوله وفتحه ودمه مع كسر ثالثه وفتحه في الأول وكسره في الثاني وفتحه في الثالث. It is permissible to recite it as ضفدع or ضفدع or ضفدع, and the most famous are the two ضفدع and ضفدع. So he says that all of these amphibious animals, those that live in water and on land, according to the asah position are haram. And then he gives examples of frogs, ضفدع, وسرطان, lobsters, ويسمى أقرب الماء, and then he says that they are known as the scorpions of water. وَنَسْنَاسٍ, and nasnas. Nasnas is a sea animal, and it is in Hayatul Haywan, and others have also mentioned that it is an animal that has 1 leg and 1 hand and 1 eye, and it seems like a human that is vertically cut in half from his head to feet. And this animal looks like humans, and they say that if he was to find a human, he would kill the human. And Allah Jalla wa'ala knows best. It is mentioned in the books. And some ulama say that perhaps it is mafqood, it may no longer exist in the world. Nevertheless, Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah mentions that since this animal also survives out of water, this animal is also haram. And then he mentions وَحَيَّةٍ, and snakes are also haram. وَسَائِرِ ذَوَاتِ السُّمُومِ, and all poisonous creatures are haram. وَسُلْحَفَاتٍ, and turtles are also haram. And the reason why I'm translating sulhafat as turtles instead of tortoise is because turtles can be aquatic or semi-aquatic, or even those which are mostly terrestrial. Whereas the tortoise that lives on land is not really equipped for water. وَتَرْسَةٍ, and tarsa is al-laja, and al-laja is also from the types of turtles. Now according to him, aquatic animals that can survive out of water are haram. This is his preferred position. Then he says, مع صحة النهي عن قتل الضفدع اللازم منه حرمته. And he says that since the killing of a frog is haram, it necessitates the prohibitiveness of its consumption. Since the prohibitiveness of killing the frogs is authentically established, that also necessitates the prohibitiveness of consuming frogs. Because if killing them is haram, then how will you eat them without killing them? He says, كذا في الروضة كأصلها. He says this position is not only in Minhaju Talibin, it is also in Rawdatu Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ka-asliha. And remember what the asl of Rawdatu Talibin was? Rawdatu Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah is the summarized version of Fathul Aziz of Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah. And both of these imams are from Ashabu Tarjih of the Shafi'i madhhab. So the hurma of lobsters and crabs and all these sea animals that can survive out of water is the position of Al-Imam al-Rafi rahimahullah and Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, established from Minhaju Talibin and Rawdatu Talibin. And then Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah mentions his preference, the position that he gives preference to. He says, وَهُوَ الْمُعْتَمَدْ, that these aquatic animals that can survive out of water, them being haram, is the mu'tamad position of the Shafi'i madhhab. According to who? Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah. After mentioning his mu'tamad position, then he says, وَإِنْ قَالَ فِي الْمَجْمُوعِ أَنَّ الصَّحِيحَ الْمُعْتَمَدَ أَنَّ جَمِيعَ مَا فِي الْبَحْرِ تَحِلُّ مَيْتَتُهُ إِلَّا الضِّفْدَعِ. He says even though Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah mentioned the contrary position in Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab, but the mu'tamad position of Al-Imam Shamsuddin Ramli rahimahullah is the position mentioned in Minhaj al-Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah and Rawdat al-Talibin of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. Ka-asliha, the asl of which is Fathul Aziz, and that is by Al-Imam al-Rafi'i rahimahullah. And Fathul Aziz is a lengthy work, a detailed commentary of Al-Wajiz by Al-Imam Ghazali rahimahullah. So from this we understand that this is a validly disputed issue within the Shafi'i madhhab. And it is a mu'tamad position within the Shafi'i madhhab that all of these animals that can survive out of water are haram. And this position is not a bid'ah, not an innovation of the Hanafis. And those Hanafi muftis who said that this is only the position within the Hanafi madhhab are misinformed. Or they're not making reference to the direct sources of the Shafi'i madhhab. And perhaps they're unknowingly, unintentionally strengthening the case of the La Madhhabiyya who criticize the Hanafi madhhab. And those scholars who call themselves Shafi'is, but they believe in the permissibility of giving a verdict out of the 4 mazahib, they are out of Ahlus Sunnah. Technically, they are not Shafi'is. So they are not reliable scholars or authorities within the Shafi'i madhhab. So why should we accept their opinions? And finally, this position of lobsters and crabs being haram and all of these sea animals that can survive out of water, the position of their hurma is also mentioned in Fathul Mu'in of Al-Imam Zainuddin As-Saghir. This is the famous book in the Shafi'i madhhab, and Zainuddin As-Saghir because there are two Zainuddin. The grandfather is also Zainuddin. And this work, Fathul Mu'in, is by the grandson Al-Imam Zainuddin As-Saghir. The grandfather, Al-Imam Zainuddin, was also a great scholar. Now, Al-Imam Zainuddin in his Fathul Mu'in mentions both the aqwal, both positions. It is well known in the Shafi'i madhhab that if Imam Zainuddin, if he mentions two positions but does not give tarjih to any one of the two, in the Shafi'i madhhab, both are regarded as mu'tamad. And this is a habit of the great Shaykh, that sometimes he mentions two aqwal, two positions, and accepts one of them but does not declare the other as shaz or da'if qawl. And remember, Al-Imam Zainuddin Saghir rahimahullah is the direct student of Al-Imam Ibn Hajar Makki rahimahullah. Al-Imam Zainuddin in Fathul Mu'in, he says, ويحرم من الحيوان البحري ضفدع وتمساح وسلحفاة وسرطان لا قرش ودنيلس على الأصح في حمى. قال في المجموع الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر يحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. He says from the sea animals the following are haram: ضفدع, frogs; timsahun, crocodiles; وسلحفاة, and turtles; وسرطان, and lobsters. So this shows that this is not a bid'ah of the Hanafis. This is a valid position even within the Shafi'i madhhab. So those who claim that this cannot be substantiated from the Quran and Sunnah, this is why no other madhhab accepted this position. This is an accusation, this is a lie. And how can those who claim to be Shafis make a statement like this? And then Imam Zainuddin says, قال في المجموع, that Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah said in Al-Majmu' الصحيح المعتمد أن جميع ما في البحر يحل ميتته إلا الضفدع. And then he mentions the other position of Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, that these sea animals are halal. And what did I say before? If Al-Imam Zainuddin Saghir rahimahullah mentions both positions and does not give tarjih to any one of the two, then both are considered to be mu'tamad positions in the Shafi'i madhhab. And remember, all of these madhahib, they prove their positions from the Quran and from the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The Hanafi dalil from the Quran is from Surah Ma'idah, verse 3. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةِ. Al-Mayta is made haram upon you. You are forbidden to eat carrion, dead meat. So the Hanafis say that Al-Mayta here incorporates all kinds of dead meat. It includes all dead animals, the terrestrial animals and the aquatic animals. All dead animals belonging to the land and the sea are haram, are included in this verse of the Quran. So the question is that why do you then permit the eating of fish? So the Hanafis say that because that is mentioned explicitly in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Sayyiduna Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma narrates that Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam said, أُحِلَّتْ لَنَا مَيْتَتَانِ وَدَمَانِ فَأَمَّا الْمَيْتَتَانِ فَالْجَرَادُ وَالْحُوتُ وَأَمَّا الدَّمَانِ فَالْكَبِدُ وَالتِّحَالُ. This is in Sunan ibn Majah and Musnad of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. In this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that two types of dead meat and two types of blood have been made halal for us. In this hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned hut, and in the other hadith explicitly the word as-samak, fish, is mentioned. And in the other narration of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, in which explicitly the word as-samak is mentioned. About that hadith, Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says that this is a sahih hadith. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says in his Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhazzab, وَلِلْحَدِيثِ الصَّحِيحِ عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما قال أحلت لنا ميتتان ودمان فالميتتان السمك والجراد. As-samak, the fish, is explicitly mentioned in this narration. Two types of dead meat is made halal for us. The first one is as-samak, the fish, and the second is al-jarad, locust. And Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah says regarding this very narration, قال ولكن الرواية الأولى هي الصحيحة وهي في معنى المرفوع. Subhanallah. He says that this narration is sahih and it is in the meaning of marfu'. So the Hanafis say that all terrestrial and aquatic dead animals are haram and the hurma is proven from the Quran, Surah Ma'idah verse 3. With the exception of fish, because the permissibility of fish is directly legislated by the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. The Hanafi ulama also argue that there is no mention in the entire literature of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wasallam or any of the companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam or any of his sahaba alayhim ridwan ever consumed the meat of a sea animal other than the fish. So the Hanafis say that after substantiating our claim from the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, for argument's sake, even if our understanding of the ayah was incorrect, and it was permissible to consume the meat of all sea animals, and the permissibility was not restricted to the fish only, then at least once in his lifetime Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any of his companions would have consumed the meat of other sea animals other than the fish in order to prove its permissibility. So why is it that in the entire hadith literature we do not find a single narration in which it is mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or any of his companions ever consumed any other seafood other than the fish? In the hadith literature, only the consumption of fish is mentioned, and that which belongs to the fish family. So those Shafi'i scholars who believe that all sea animals are halal, and those who believe that those sea animals that can survive out of water are also halal, they have their dalail from the Quran and Sunnah, and the Hanafis also have their dalail from the Quran and Sunnah. All the madhhab, they have their dalail from the Quran and Sunnah. And the difference is based on their understanding of the Quran and Sunnah. There is the ijtihad, and they will be rewarded for the ijtihad. And those who say that all seafood is halal, they also present a verse of the Quran. The same surah, Surah Ma'idah, verse 96, أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَتَعَامُهُ. Allah Jalla wa Ala says that the catch of the sea is made halal for you, and eating it is also made halal for you. مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِلسَّيَّارَةِ وَحُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَرِّ مَا دُمْتُمْ حُرُمًا. And for the travelers, and forbidden to you is the hunting of land as long as you are in the state of ihram. So these ulama say that since the catch of the sea is made halal for us, hence why they believe that all sea animals are halal. Now the Hanafis dispute, and they say that what is meant in this verse of the Quran is mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that is fish. And they also say that look at the context of this Quranic verse. This is to establish the rulings of ihram, meaning those who are in the state of ihram cannot hunt land animals. In the same verse Allah Jalla wa Ala says وَحُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَرِّ مَا دُمْتُمْ حُرُمًا. Meaning as long as you are in the state of ihram, the hunting of land animals is forbidden for you. And أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ صَيْدُ الْبَحْرِ وَتَعَامُهُ, and the catch of the sea is permissible for you. وَتَعَامُهُ, and eating it. So the Hanafis say that this verse wasn't revealed to tell you what is halal and what is haram. This is for the rulings of hunting in the state of ihram. And the verse that we have presented clearly tells you al-maytah is made haram for you, which incorporates all terrestrial and aquatic animals. And the exception is legislated from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Shafis argue that this goes against the usul of the Hanafis. لا يخصص القطعي بظني. An indecisive source of legislation cannot specify a definitive source of legislation. So the hadith permitting the consumption of fish is from Khabrul Ahad. It is a zanni source. So the taqyid or takhsis of the mutlaq or the aam of the Quran according to Hanafis with Khabrul Ahad is impermissible. And then the Hanafis respond to that based on their own usul. And according to them, this objection is invalid. And there's another hadith that the Shawafi present. And that is narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And the hadith is Hasan Sahih. هُوَ الطَّهُورُ مَاؤُهُ وَالْحِلُّ مَيْتَتُهُ. The beloved of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the water of the sea is pure and its dead is halal. So the Shawafi and the other mazahib, they say that look, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned that the dead of the sea are halal. And this means that all the dead animals of the sea are halal. So the Hanafis respond to that the dead animals which are permitted in this narration are mentioned explicitly in the other hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is a samak, that is fish, and only fish should be permitted. Now my objective here is not to prove which one has stronger dalail. That's the work of the mujtahidun, but this is only for those people who claim that these mazahib are based on blind following. For those ignorant people who have no knowledge of the alphabets of Islamic jurisprudence, and they have the audacity to criticize the great jurists of al-Islam, the great imams of the four mazahib. And to the common people, they start claiming that they take everything from the Quran and the Sunnah. And these people follow the imams. So this is why all the arguments are based on the methodology of the ulama. So I thought after this entire academic presentation, which may be beyond the comprehension of many of these people, and when they can't understand it themselves, they may end up deceiving some common people that look, this is very complicated, this is very convoluted. We don't have to understand these complex methodologies, we just follow the Quran and the Sunnah. So just to avoid the possibility of them deceiving those who are beginners in seeking sacred knowledge, for their understanding, so they can all understand that all the madhahib of the imams are based on the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.